Waiting for you.
All right, so bringing to order the June 28th meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board. It's kind of feedbacky. What makes that happen? What makes the feedback?
I don't know, it's someone's mic.
Yeah.
So this meeting will be conducted in person. As a courtesy, will also be conducted via remote in accordance with the applicable state law. Please note that while the option for remote attendance and participation is provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if the technology fails and the technological problems are unable to be mitigated and thereby interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. So we're going to start with public input.
Okay, yeah.
Did you have a different idea?
No, I was just looking at the order we had on there. That's right.
We can take items out of order.
Yeah, you can.
This might be public input.
Should we take items out of order? Would people like to do that, or should we proceed with our agenda?
I think 3 meeting houses here, if you want to take them out of order.
Well, what if someone else wants to speak about 3 Meeting House and they're expecting it to be later?
It's an administrative item.
Why are we skipping that?
Why don't we just do the agenda order? So public input will be limited to statements from the public relating to issues with the jurisdiction of the planning board that are not currently the subject of a pending public hearing before the planning board. Public comment on any pending public hearings shall only be heard during those public hearings. So is there anyone who would like to speak during the public input? Anyone on the Zoom?
No.
Okay, that being the case, we'll go to policies and procedures. I'd like to keep this, my target is to maybe do this for 20 minutes. Maybe at the end of this conversation, have a draft that we can send to Paul Haverty to review. I would just like to clarify that we're not going to vote at any point until we have a draft that's been reviewed by council and that we've brought back to the board and posted the draft on the agenda. And I would suggest have an opportunity for public input to the policies and procedures prior to any vote. Does that seem like a reasonable way to proceed to the rest of the board?
Yeah, agree.
Okay. So, shall we go back to where we left off, or shall we start back at the beginning?
Well, I thought we had,
I came up with a couple of suggestions to some stuff we already went over. Sorry. So, I kind of would like to start at the beginning, but I don't think it's anything very big or long or that's going to cause any great explosions. So, definitions I would leave alone. Roles and responsibilities.
Just one thing on the definitions that I've noticed.
Yep.
As I was going through the document, I also happened to pick up the site plan and special permit regulations and procedures. Some of the changes we're making are going to make it out of sync with that.
So then we'll have to go back to that later.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make people aware that
yeah,
we'll have to do that eventually.
Sure. Okay. So I would like for the second paragraph, the second bullet, any increase from the planning board members to town staff or town council shall go through the chair. The chair may then decide to relay the inquiry to town staff or town council, period, and then getting rid of or on, just say for more complex matters, the chair may direct specific members of the board or board members to make the inquiry directly to town staff or council and report their discussions back to the board.
Yeah, they're in there. So, did Evan update that?
Oh,
What you have printed is my edits.
from today?
No, they were
I
attached to the
was
agenda.
looking at your edits earlier this afternoon, but there's like so many versions is a little,
So then, what you have in your packet are my version, which is based upon the original version.
okay.
So my suggestion here is that it should be shall,
Oh,
to the full board for consideration. So it wouldn't be solely to the chair, but to the full board.
yeah. Right,
And then the chair could designate one or two members
right.
to work directly with staff. I want to be involved in all those discussions, or be aware and be invited to.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Deirdre, can you just repeat your version for a minute? Because I think I heard something different from Evan.
The planning board members, shall,
On the complex matters.
yeah, for complex matters and discussion, the chair may direct specific members to make the inquiry directly to town staff or town council and report, the discussion back to the board.
Okay, that is different than what Evan's suggesting. Evan is suggesting coming to the board first, discussing in the meeting.
Yeah, no, I don't mind, I think that we did go back and forth on that, I guess.
I think that, like, sometimes, like, there may be an issue that, like, I think you should have the flexibility to
Yeah.
not have to come to the board, right, and just designate.
If it's not a substantive.
Yeah.
Nothing's an issue unless the board decides that it's an issue.
Right, and that's up to the
If
chair
an,
to
if an
make-
individual board member wants,
Well, what if the
To
board
re-
member and the chair,
why should two members
okay,
identify something as an issue without board consideration?
So I just want to be clear of the unintended consequences. That will likely delay projects.
There's no urgency among the board or the public to resolve any matter that's in front of it. We've been through this.
Yeah, but what about if there's like a simple question about process?
Bring it up at a meeting.
And someone
There's
reaches
too much,
out and
there's
they're like,
there's
"Oh,
too much
yeah."
confusion going on with all the sidebars and the attempt to create sidebars, and everything should go through the board. So that the board can decide whether it warrants a discussion,
That's fair.
rather than wasting staff's time or sending an individual board member down a path that the rest of the board doesn't think warrants
Yeah.
additional consideration.
what do people think?
I'm okay with it. The past couple of years, we haven't had that issue, so
Yeah,
I don't see any
like
issue with that wording.
Well, my concern is that if I have a question and need clarification, and everyone else in their mind thinks that they are clear, the vote's going to be a no to get that clarification, and I'm not going to have the information I need to be able to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
That's a good point.
Yeah, but you can't go to the chair and ask that question and then,
not if we implement this. It has to be voted on by the board.
No,
at-
this is
at
you
the
go to
meeting.
the chair, I mean,
Just
this
go
is
to the
that you have to
chair.
go to the board to make an inquiry to somebody else.
Uh,
I mean, I don't think we should all be running around asking people questions in all
I agree,
different
but-
departments and boards.
But going to the chair and the chair making the decision is different than what Evan's suggesting. Evan is suggesting to come before the board in a meeting and vote on whether there needs to be that clarification.
And I'm only suggesting that for regulatory purposes. If it's procedural,
Yeah, who cares?
then expedite it to go through the chair. But if it's regulatory, it should be presented by the board member to the full board's consideration in a public venue so that the applicant can hear it as well. The applicant may want to engage in an offline discussion.
Yeah, for the purpose of public,
For purpose, the
open
technical
meeting
issues.
and public
they're-
hearings, I
The
think you're right.
technical issues is the premise of this.
Right. But who determines when it's a technical issue is,
The board needs to, because there
Right,
is
right.
more often than not, there are technical issues that the board doesn't want to weigh into. It may be a better matter for a different regulatory board. Or it may be a matter that the board thinks it's outside of their jurisdiction, or just doesn't want to spend their time and energy on.
okay. Yeah, I agree in the interest of open meetings and public hearings that it should be a board determination.
Okay?
Yeah, right, your point's well taken, but
It will delay the process
It's
significantly.
always been this way. I mean,
Well, I
I'm
mean,
just,
that's not a good.
but you're talking
I'm
about
gonna
a
make a-
particular project. right?
If I have a clarification,
Are you talking about a particular, if
No.
we're publicly talking, but if we had a question
We're
about
talking about a
policy.
policy for the board.
Well, that's what I mean. If we have a question for a policy, why do we have to bring it to the public? Why can't the?
No, I
why
already,
can't
I
the
already
ch-
clarified, for
why can't the
regulatory
chair?
purposes only.
Regulatory.
If it's just procedure and policy, then bring it
She
to.
can,
Sure.
Deirdre can make a decision that you can talk to the
Is that-
attorney.
is that-
Or
clear
the
here?
chair, whoever
no,
that
it's
is.
not distinct, it's
That's what I'm
not
saying, like,
distinguished.
that's why
The
you
way
want
Evan
it-
wrote that, that's not,
Well, I assumed it was specific to regulatory because it talks about complicated matters.
So let's
That's
say,
why-
for
Could be anything.
regulatory,
Huh?
could be regulatory, it could be procedural. it could be
Regulatory,
So now we're-
Why don't
now
we
we're
say
splitting it up.
regulatory specifically?
regulatory, I feel strongly that it should go through the board.
I agree.
I
Yeah.
agree.
So do I.
And any particular project should go through the board.
Right.
And then
All
it's
right.
public, but if it's another matter that has nothing to do with the public.
Okay, so let's change that wording to say regulatory and,
Policies and procedures.
Then I think we're
you
done.
have, like, standard policy making, procedural making, which I do all the time, is what you do is you make it flexible so that you have that determination, and it always goes to the chair, and then the chair then goes, yeah, well, then we need to bring this up, and no, we don't need to bring it up. That way you don't need to have
right.
it all, like, over analyzed and over called out, because it's a general process policy.
Agreed.
So that's why I think, like, the way it was originally written is, takes care of that.
We just
because have the
clarified
chair.
it. I mean, I think that's fine.
'Cause
Okay.
Okay. So,
What's your next one?
so, August 8th, 2012.
I also want to mention that 1.3, the public input and public comment
We're
is still on hold.
Holding that for the
Yeah,
moment. till
that's still on hold for the.
The select board with council is working on a townwide policy, so we're just putting that aside until
Yeah.
they promulgate their townwide policy, and then we'll adopt that. And modify it if it needs to be for our purposes, but, okay. I need to turn off my phone. So, the updated text with recommendations under 2.2, so voter eligibility, I would just make the small change that subdivision permits, all those board members who are potentially eligible to vote on the matter before the board shall be permitted to participate in the discussion and voting. So if anyone's eligible, and final voting if eligible. Because there's potentially eligible, you can participate, but maybe not vote. Right?
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, is it that last third from the bottom for purposes of regulatory permitting? So that I need to change the word deliberations to the discussion of the
before
board's
final-
decision.
Yeah, right.
And then it is
Well,
not.
it says that here, where I am.
Okay.
Where are you?
Participate in the discussion of the board's decision and final voting if eligible. I just added the updated text with recommendations, Chris?
Yeah, I'm looking at Evan's.
Oh, there's so many versions.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll throw away all the other versions and bring back another version one more time, because
Yeah, so in that statement, I see participate in deliberations and final voting. I don't see,
oh, I have participate in the discussion of the board's decision and final voting.
I have no idea what you guys are looking at.
Chris, what section you at?
2.2, under adopted,
Okay.
adopted August 8th, and
Yep.
updated 5/24 and 6/14.
Updated,
Yeah.
where's that?
okay, my bad, I was looking at the wrong one.
Yeah, I see that. And then one on the, what's?
So I'm just saying, instead of only, all, all board members who are potentially eligible to vote on the matter before the board shall be permitted to participate in the discussion of the board's
Okay.
and, yeah, and those who are eligible to vote. But I guess I just split a hair, sorry.
It's the same thing, yeah,
It's the same thing.
only in all.
Yep. Okay, never mind. All right. Do other people have other things? Oh, under 2.3, interacting with the public, I wanted to say, the planning board member, the bottom sentence, the planning board member should share, not be encouraged to share, just should share that information
Which
in the
section was that
relevant.
again?
2.3, under adopted, the last sentence.
Mhm.
I think it should say the planning board members should share that information and get rid of what the rest of the planning board, because it's to everybody in the relevant public meeting forum or platform.
Yeah. And in addition to that one, I'm also going to update where is it? Okay, never mind. I'm on a different one again.
Any more comments, Deirdre?
I don't think so. There was one clarification with the, when we have a site visit, I don't know where it was, and it's on a non-public
Yep.
way. I asked Paul Haverty about that, and he said, well, it's up to the owner whether they want to let us on their private property. But if they don't, then we don't have any standing to make it a public process. So in that case, it would be a site visit, as we've had in the past, that would be no discussion, no deliberation, just like, this is where the building's gonna go, this is where the water treatment plant's gonna go, this is what we're deciding between this site and that site for building X or Y or whatever. And then it would be a factual exchange of information only from the developer or the applicant to the board, and then we would report on that as if it were a meeting. Another thing I was charged to ask, I think, of Paul Haverty about the, whether or not we need to be minuting subcommittees, and Paul Haverty felt if we have an official subcommittee, if they're meeting, even if it's only 2 people, that they should be posting their meetings and posting minutes of their meetings. I mean, I think this subcommittee for the policies is basically the work product of their policies, is the content of the meetings, and I don't even know if you're doing them in meetings. I think you might be
Not
doing them
anymore.
individually, so, but, so if you guys meet,
Well, I think this is.
We haven't
all
been
good.
meeting up
No,
to-
we haven't. This
since
is,
the
this
first
is
couple.
going just fine
Yeah.
okay.
by email. which
And then,
creates
about the
Trace.
whether or not the associate member should vote and/or participate.
Before we get to that one, can we go back to the
Sorry.
site visit? The second bullet in there about
I
the
couldn't find that, sorry.
individual.
Where is that?
3.4. The second bullet about 3.4, about the individual site visit. Joel and Ruth Luna sent an email with a good point that I need to re-clarify that, because the way that that second bullet is stated, it implies that all rules that apply from
Yeah.
the full one apply to the individual, and
that's
it's
clearly
not
not
what's
practical.
intended. It's only these bullets above here that are intending to apply to the individual, so I'm gonna reword that.
Or strike it.
I think it's important that,
I mean, I think we'll just, again, it'll be like a factual reporting back would be expected and not deliberation occurring.
Right.
So that you wouldn't get into a situation of serial deliberation, because you weren't deliberating with anyone, you're just receiving,
But I think that reporting back is an important,
yeah,
yeah.
okay. So I didn't integrate it in, but, because I think we already did that, but Paul Haverty did clarify that we should, that he thought it was appropriate if the board determines to have 7 people be the maximum eligible to vote, and that not, he thought we should, he agreed that we should include the associate member in all discussion, in even things they can't, they wouldn't vote on, or policy matters, and he said he felt strongly that, if you don't let people participate, they get alienated and they don't engage. So if we want to just have more, more voices participating, which I think we do, then we would encourage the even non-voting person, as long as they're not either mullined out or recused for ethics reasons or other reasons.
So can I just make sure that we have that clear? So, excuse me, so anyone not eligible to vote, including the associate member if they're not eligible, would be able to discuss
Yeah.
in the deliberation in general and the
So
discussion
you-
of the
So
decision.
you want to overturn your longstanding policy because council suggests so?
Not the discussion prior to the decision,
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure that we had clear.
yeah.
Okay,
Everything up to that.
okay.
Is that what we
Which is,
decided
which is
last
what,
time?
which is what the current policy, draft policy
Which
suggests.
I think is also what we decided last time.
Yes.
Now, what about the voting of the associate member? Would that associate member still be able to vote on administrative matters and anything?
Only if they're necessary to make 7.
Okay, so that is slightly different than what we were potentially discussing last time.
You can never have more than 7 voting members.
No, if it's necessary to make 7.
Not 8.
So if someone's recused,
Or if someone's
or
absent,
someone's
like
absent,
for a policy thing, like.
then the associate member can vote on that.
So if we had a full
Item.
board tonight, the associate member would not be able to vote on anything.
Right.
Policy.
That's right.
Assuming none of us were disqualified for one reason or
Or
another.
someone wasn't absent.
Okay, so that's not what we talked about last time. We talked about administrative matters they could vote on, like policies and things like that.
I didn't think so.
Well, they can vote as long as there's no more than 7 voting members.
Right.
And we got clarification from Paul Haverty.
He said that the board could determine that.
Still can't have more
And
than
I
7
thought we
voting
did.
members.
Why not? On administrative matters?
I don't know, we've never dealt with any of these questions before. I mean,
I know.
7, the full board's 7,
Yeah.
and you need an odd number to vote. I mean, isn't that general practice of a voting
No, but
board?
I think Chris's point is valid. I mean, if it's not a major thing, and it helps engage, and then to Paul Haverty's point, it helps engage
Well, they
someone
can-
because they want to vote on whether or
Everybody's
not to
suggesting they
adjourn
can
a
engage in
meeting.
deliberation,
Yeah.
Rather than the discussion.
not
yeah.
the
They
actual
didn't
vote.
used to be able to engage in that.
Yeah, but if someone wants to vote to adjourn a meeting, like, let them vote. Like, to me, that's like, if it's
So if there are 7 members already to vote on minutes, meeting minutes,
You don't need more than 7.
but can that associate member vote on the meeting minutes?
I don't know. It's never been an issue before.
We can make it meeting minutes in the ending of the meeting, but if it's an issue that we're voting on,
You want to go back to council
The
and
ass-
ask about
that-
whether.
the
That's-
associate should not
they can
vote.
have 8 people
You
voting on
can't have
this.
8
no,
voting
no,
members.
I don't think he's disagreeing, I don't think he disagrees with you there. I think we're talking about like other stuff, other than anything that's related to like a,
If we need a majority in favor, and there's 8 people here, the associate should not vote.
that's what you're saying, okay.
That's my.
Because you have all board members are here, full board members, there's 7 of us. If we're here, they should be voting. But if there's administrative item, adjournment of the meeting or adjourning,
Or a discussion
meeting
about
minutes.
policy, like,
But if there's anything that we want a majority to do it, I don't think the associate member should be able to vote on it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know why we're
We need to
getting caught in
clarify
the
that, because
weeds.
you just contradicted yourself.
All right,
you
fine,
need a- you
then
need-
don't vote at all
Yeah,
then.
No voting for the associate. When we got seven, we got seven. Simple as that.
Okay, so
We're
that is a
muddying up the
rewrite.
waters here, and it's wasting time in my mind.
So that's different than what we wrote
Well, change it.
and adopted.
I thought we agreed on that last week,
No.
or the week
If you
before.
read what I was asked to update,
Okay, well, let's change it again. Where are you, Chris?
Past 25 minutes.
Block going up.
looking for it. Under roles and responsibilities of the associate member.
What number?
2.1. In that first sub-bullet, the role of associate sub-member? or
Oh, yeah, I
the
had
sub-
crossed out that whole bullet, actually.
So, but that's what we had discussed last time. And I tried to clarify it multiple times to make sure I got it right.
Okay, well, maybe we can get it right now. Let's get rid of that bullet. During the special permit process, the associate member may participate in discussion and deliberations, and I would say, as well as in the discussion of the, no, sorry.
So you are alienating the associate member by doing this.
It's always been that way.
They
Right,
don't
but-
vote.
Just because
On
it's
every
always
single
been that
thing.
way, Evan, doesn't mean
I agree,
it
that's
should.
not a
Reason for
good
that.
reason.
There's a good reason for that.
Okay, but that's, I don't think, I mean, we always just did it that way, that's like my mom says. But, I think that my understanding was that the majority of the people at this table agreed that the associate member would vote when they were needed
Mm-hmm.
and not when they are not.
Exactly.
Is everybody,
But we
is
need
that
to
everybody's
define
understanding?
when
Okay, they're needed
is.
to make a supermajority, or to make a quorum, or to make 7. And if there's already 7, then they're not needed
So, let me just,
for anything.
so when we had a full board, and I was the associate member, I was doing all of this work on this policy document. And when it comes time to vote, I would not be able to vote on that?
Correct.
That's absolutely
Like,
ridiculous.
if we want
You
some,
took on that responsibility. You took it on.
I
right,
took it on to help clarify this.
Okay.
Well, okay, but
Your
clarifying
prerogative.
it
That's
not
what
in your
your
favor
prerogative.
doesn't mean it's not clarified.
But to not be able to vote on something that you put that much work and effort into,
Well, that's an individual situation, and I don't think that,
but that's one example of many.
okay.
If you want an
Well,
engaged
We're a board
associate,
of 7
I
people.
have
and-
been on the board of a rather large not-for-profit for 23 years. I have never had a position in which I actually had a vote. Doesn't matter, I have plenty of influence.
but that
I don't
doesn't
see why
make
this
it
is
right.
different.
There's
Well-
another town that does it the exact opposite, and that
Does
allows,
that make them right?
no.
It
no,
does that.
I
But
know,
that's
but
what I'm
I do
saying.
think,
Okay,
You
how
can
about
do
we
it-
vote on this question?
Okay.
Who would like to say that the associate board member votes on those occasions when their vote is needed, and not on matters where there's a full complement of 7 board members without the associate member voting? For
Aye.
whatever it is.
Aye.
John?
No.
no,
Aye.
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 Nope.
Okay, 4 to 3.
4-3. Okay. It could have been 4-4.
well, but I, you know, again, I think the
Again, it's
fact
just
that,
going around in circles, that's all.
no,
that
I
is.
get it, but.
Oh, I guess we
And
don't
Paul,
get it.
based
We're
on
not
tie,
getting it.
tie votes are defeating the motion.
Yeah,
Right.
So it would have been defeated even if it was 4-4,
by definition, but
by definition.
I still think
So it
that like
doesn't
something like
matter if there's
policy
a tie
should
vote.
be, like, pretty
That's
much,
creating confusion.
No, it isn't.
It
We
is.
just uncreated the confusion, let's
Okay.
move along. All right. So, we're not doing the public input, the public policy. I still don't have a strong feeling about, I mean, I don't know about I don't know why we have to comment on the retaining walls and the water. I do think we should have the flexibility to do sureties. I think that the sureties as well as the,
Where are you?
in my head, sorry.
Oh,
The sureties as well as the people being up to date with their taxes is gonna require more work. I forwarded your questions
Yes, he
to
forwarded that,
Paul. You didn't hear back?
I haven't heard back from
Yeah,
him.
so we'll put that aside for the moment. So that still needs to be drafted up. I think we need to look at some other towns, what they do with regards to sureties.
No problem.
Can we go back to 3.1? Bullet 2,
3.1 or 3.2?
3.1? Just to finalize the procedures for the agenda.
So, I thought we were saying that was going to the chair on Thursday and the board on Friday.
Yes. Okay, and then I suggested adding a new bullet, subsequent revised agendas.
I thought we said that we took that out initially. You can always add it after.
That's fine, I'm okay with that. I just think that you should, subsequent in nature, substantial in nature, but if it is substantial, it gets pushed to the following meeting. We don't have to take it under advisement.
Correct.
If you, right?
Anything that's on the agenda, the board can decide to push, continue, table.
Okay.
And then,
You know,
the running list, did we decide we're having a public running list or we're having our own individual running list?
Where are you now?
Yeah.
3.1 bullet 4.
Vote for.
During the public hearing portion of the special permit process, a running list of issues and concerns is recommended to be documented by the board, especially for lengthy public hearings and linked from the relevant public hearing on each agenda. The list of issues and concerns may be used by the board to develop the final project conditions.
if I may just, regardless of whether the running list includes whatever the public says, when you finally close the public hearing and you get into your discussion of your decision, at a minimum, at that point, the board is going to have to determine what items on the list truly are of concern and relevant to the
Right.
board's criteria.
Right.
My suggestion is that during the public hearing, if there are items brought up by the public,
That
it'd
you
be a
wanna-
good time during the hearing for the board to discuss whether those items by the public are shared by the board. If they're shared by
Yeah.
the board, then they're automatically on the list of concerns or issues.
I mean, it would probably lead to a conversation that would yield better transparency of what are the important issues for the board, and hopefully not have so many long, drawn-out things that if we think about it, maybe the conclusion
That would be a
could
great
have
job
been
for the
derived
secretary.
sooner. What?
That'd be a great job for the secretary to do, right? Like that, wouldn't that be the responsibility of the secretary?
To keep the running list?
Well, just to, you know,
Or someone, people
Like-
could propose them. Because, I mean, like, I have my own list.
right.
But yeah, we could, yeah,
Fine.
okay.
So,
You referring to the clerk, the board, the clerk
Sorry,
of the
this
board?
clerk,
Yeah.
yes, I think, yes.
so leave that bullet in, adjust it to mention that the board should decide to include items from the public during the public hearing, and then the clerk can keep that running list.
Okay.
Right.
And somebody said, I think maybe Evan, that we should be flexible about requiring a final approval letter. I mean, we can have contingency letters that say this approval is contingent on the conditions of the, water department being met, but I mean, I guess that there should be a letter, doesn't have to be here at our meeting, right? But I mean, they do submit something at the end that says, my conditions have been met, right?
At the end of what?
At the end of, before we vote, or before the Mylars are signed, or before the decision is,
I would like an
Sometimes.
email or acknowledgement before I vote, like everything's, but it's all set.
If a particular department had a serious concern, and they didn't think the board was addressing it, they would let us know.
okay.
But I think so far since I've been on, we've really been looking for that final letter before.
Yeah, you can
taking a
condition it
vote.
if you, right, if you feel as though it's not fully within the board's jurisdiction. And again, much of what the water district submits to you is not
Right.
not at all within your
It's not our
jurisdiction.
business at
Right.
all.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to be a little careful about laying down hard rules that,
Well, that's why in
slow us
here
down,
it's recommended. It's not-
recommended, and I think that's appropriate. Yeah.
Is there a lot more change that we, 40
No.
40 minutes into this?
All right, I think we should be done, sorry.
Are we prepared to send this off to Paul yet?
I think so. I mean,
I can make the revisions and send it out.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and along those lines, I actually also asked Paul, there was some conversation last time about when we are doing a decision, and I would say this would be comparable, that if we send around a draft and people have edits, that's not it's not
Right.
it's not deliberation, it's actually just trying to accurately reflect what we've already decided.
Yeah.
So we can do that and we can the word he used was, we can circulate drafts, we can collate the responses and then recirculate them, but without any further discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so I'll do I'll do the revision, I'll send it out to everyone. If you have any other edits, send it back, and then I'll send out a re-revised version.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
sorry, guys.
Now for our next number.
And now for our next act.
Doris Drive.
So first is Doris Drive, administrative review.
Jonathan Gold is with us on Zoom. Jonathan, you want to give just a quick introduction as to why you're here?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Gold. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm an attorney in Newton, and I represent a purchaser of some property in Chelmsford. That's the addresses are 1 to 3 Doris Drive and 249 to 251 Groton Road, and they're abutting parcels. And historically, these came out of for purposes of my title, they came out of a 1988 subdivision for which the planning board at that time required a covenant. And that they were lots 1, 2, and 3. And what is now 213 Doris and 249 to 251 is in fact what was lot 1. And it appears just from the record that at no time, even though Doris Drive was built out, and I believe the covenant at the time was in connection with the development of perhaps an industrial parcel at the very end of Doris, which is a cul-de-sac. And it was, I think it was for making the improvements to set up as a public way Doris Drive. And of course, all the improvements were made, but it doesn't appear like any of the lots were ever released from the covenant. So in the process since that time, I think it was 1987 subdivision, I think the board acted on the original subdivision plan in 1988. There have been further divisions, and most recently in 2022, I believe the planning board, latest October 2022, signed off on a A&R plan, which took what was Lot 1 and converted it into Lots A and Lots B, same configuration, just two separate buildable lots. So the 249, 1 to 3 doors is one lot, Lot A, and 249 to 251 is Lot B, but they're all effectively, for the purpose of that covenant, revert back to what is known as Lot 1 on that 1988 plan. I'm not sure whether I'm making any sense to you, but the relief I'm seeking is just to satisfy my lender, my construction lender, that their covenant has been satisfied as to Lot 1. I don't know, Mr. Belansky, if I presented that properly or not.
Yeah, I think you've covered it a little bit more simplistic. The lot release that's being requested is for a lot that was shown on a plan that the planning board endorsed in 1988. Since then, as Mr. Gold indicated, in 2022, that Lot 1 is subject to an A&R whereby 2 duplexes will be built. So this is essentially cleaning up.
Administrative matter.
Yeah, an administrative matter.
Now, the reason for the covenant has been satisfied at this point?
Yeah,
for the
Doris
road?
Drive, the public
Completely
portion's
satisfied.
fully built. It's, it's
Okay.
been in existence for a long period of time. There's no outstanding issues on Doris Drive.
Take a motion.
I'll move that we grant the Form G lot release for 1-3 Doris Drive.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Gold, I'll have the chair sign this tonight, and you can have somebody come by tomorrow or Friday to pick up.
That's great.
Okay, have a good
Will
night.
that refer to, that approval will refer to Lot 1?
Yeah, it's exactly what you submitted.
Okay, that's wonderful, that's great. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry to be a little too wordy for you. It's going to be a long night, I'm sure.
You're fine. You're fine.
Good night now.
Good night.
Next on to administrative review for 3 Meeting House Road.
What do you
All
want?
right, why don't you show the existing conditions first? It's the email I sent today.
You have that on a thumb drive? Yeah,
That's okay, you can show the site plan then.
okay. Layout?
Yeah. All right, good evening, everyone. Katie Enright with Howard Stein Hudson. Here tonight on behalf of J&C Management for COID applicability for their building at 3 Meeting House Road in Chelmsford. What J&C would like to do is take an underutilized second floor of that office building. Currently, there's 8 office condominiums on the second floor of 3 Meeting House Road, and they'd like to change those into residential condominiums. Here tonight with representatives from J&C. I'm also here tonight with the project architect who has looked at the floor plan and layout and has prepared the second floor layout plan that you have before you today. Essentially, the upper floor has 4 smaller condominiums in the middle and 4 larger on the outside. The driving factor really for this was sewer capacity. And the first thing we did was look at the sewer capacity for the office use of the second floor and look at how that would translate with the small allotment that were allowed per sewer connection into bedrooms. Bedrooms being allowed to be 12, so it matched up pretty well with the 8, going from 8 condominiums, 4 larger units at the 2 bedrooms per unit, and then the 4 smaller units in the middle to being 1-bedroom units. From there, we are in the general CD district, which is essentially the entire area of that portion of Fletcher. We're in the CEIOD overlay, and we're also, from the rear of the building to the back of the lot, we're in the Aquifer Protection District. On site, there is parking there for 1 per 200 square feet for the entire office structure. When you take the second floor and make that residential, it then becomes a parking requirement per the number of bedrooms you have on the second floor. So we're able to reduce the parking pretty significantly. So what we did was look at taking away the parking that was furthest from the building at the back of the lot, which is also in the Aquifer Protection District, and then take away the kind of the lot that's at the top of my plan. Were you able to share the site plan?
Yes.
Oh, it's over here, okay.
That screen, let me see if I can get that screen working.
Okay. So there's a small parking lot to the north of the building, which has about 18 spaces in it. So we were looking to take that area out too. We're going to do some more, certainly, discussions about the amount of parking and where they're located. But it made sense to remove both those parking areas. Essentially what that does is it takes away one of the curb cuts on Meeting House Road, which is the one to the north, where currently there's an existing parking lot. And it creates a large park area, essentially the furthest from the building at the back. So for now, for conceptual purposes, we've taken out that last parking lot and looked at it as more of a park area, as an open space area for persons who might live on the second story, and also certainly the office users that could use that. Also, in looking at the existing condition, there's some connectivity sort of issues with the parking lot. There was really this entrance that came in and 3 dead-end parking lots to the left. So what we've done is, because we're able to remove those parking spaces, essentially connect those lots so there's better circulation. You don't have to get to the end, turn around, go out, get to the next parking lot, go to the end. So we created some circulation there. We also really added to and looked at the pedestrian connectivity throughout the parking lot, altering some of the landscape islands and creating new landscape islands, and creating some striped areas so that people can better get from the parking lot into the rear door of the building. The parking itself is not any closer to the property lines than exists there today. We're reducing the amount of impervious surface on site by about 13,000 square feet based on removing these 2 parking areas. The parking that's in this area here, actually I finally found the site plan for 1 Meeting House Road that's also owned by J&C, but those parking spaces actually technically go to the building at 1 Meeting House. So I'm going to work with staff to see if, I believe we meet the 80% requirement with what's left on site once we even remove those from the overall count. If we don't, we'll look at creatively adding a couple spaces back into the site so that we meet at a minimum 80% of the requirement. The reason I'm saying 80% is this COID application is probably the first one that I've done that would technically be by right. And that's because we're not changing essentially the structure. We're not changing the square footage of the structure. We're within 80% compliance of parking. We're creating no more than 8 dwelling units. We're not doing a building that exceeds 20,000 square feet. We're no more than 2 structures, and we're not changing any of the dimensional requirements because we're essentially not changing the exterior of the building itself. With that, the change from office condos to residential condos is specific within the CEIOD, and that's to essentially prevent deterioration of the building and allow for reuse and other opportunities, including multifamily, when office use is unable to be filled. So there is significant, it's my understanding from talking to J&C management, there's significant office space that's available in this area. Certainly we understand that there's significant office space available in Chelmsford. This site it's a beautiful 2-story building. It's very residential in nature. We submitted the photographs of the building with the architectural package. It's very residential in nature. It has great pedestrian connectivity to the center of town, has great pedestrian connectivity to services. I mean, there's significant services in that area, restaurants, et cetera. So we really looked at that as being something that would be compatible and an enhancement to the area. So with that, that's pretty much it. Certainly, the representative from our clients are here tonight. The architect is also here tonight, who has looked at how the bedrooms might lay out on the second story. And if you have any questions regarding the applicability, we're here to discuss.
I do, if I could.
Yeah, should we go take it around?
Either way you want.
I guess you can start.
Okay,
Chris,
just out
you
of
wanna start?
curiosity.
I'll go after.
Okay, clarify for me, the first floor is going to remain commercial?
That's true.
And is that also office condos?
It is.
Okay, good. And what was the other thing I was going to ask? It's a little bit premature, I realize, for an applicability discussion, but any discussion yet of how you might manage any of the affordable housing aspects that we've got?
Actually, our representatives from JNC have already been to talk with David Hedison at the
Okay.
Housing Authority about that, and they're aware that, I believe, is it 2 of the units have to be affordable? Right.
Okay, good. I just wanted to see that that was being done, although it's, again, not relevant at this point in the applicability, I don't believe, but.
I have a question. The $300,000 shortfall in taxes, who do you want us to fire in town? I mean, like, what do you want us to do? It's a $300,000 shortfall in taxes, and you're asking for applicability for this project. I have an issue with that. Like, that goes on the other taxpayers. Like, I'm gonna be picking that shortfall up because it doesn't change, so.
It's a very similar situation to what we did with the store on 40 at Chelmsford Street by
That
taking the
wasn't
second floor.
$300,000.
No, it wasn't discussed at that time.
It wasn't $300,000.
You're correct. There is a tax question in regards to the applicability within the special permit criteria. We're seeking this as a by right project.
All right.
I had one continuing question on the affordable housing, because that is actually one of the criteria for the
Right.
applicability. You said 2 units have to be affordable. Is there any indication as to which 2 units that is? No. Okay. It would be nice if at least one of them were the multi-bedroom as opposed to just a single bedroom.
We're speaking directly with the Housing Authority about which units would be affordable.
Okay.
And essentially the pricing, just to look at the economics of the project also.
Paul?
I have no question.
John?
If my memory is right, there's more than one building, similar building on Meeting House Lane. Is there thought of, if this is approved?
Exactly like it.
Yeah, if this is approved down the road, is there thought to doing a similar conversion on any of the other buildings owned by the same property owner at this time?
We haven't discussed it at this time, but, I mean, specific to the CEIOD bylaw on the overlay, it does specifically call for commercial to residential. I don't think there's any commercial to residential, which would cause a tax increase. So I think it's a given based on the CEIOD that if you were to take an office and change it to residential, you would never see a tax increase. I don't see where you could.
Well, this property doesn't have a mortgage on it. I don't see the need for additional housing. This is a medical office location, and I've got a fear that we're going to lose other
The state of
offices in that.
Massachusetts is saying, shouting from the rooftops, we need 270,000 housing units.
And we have on our docket a plan for that, and we're to comply with it. So I think we should comply with that and work on that to satisfy what Massachusetts is requiring us to do. I have a hard time, going down this path. This property has no mortgage on it, so the taxpayers have to pick up the shortfall so the developer can make more money. And I'm sorry,
It's hard for the developer to make money when there's 500,000 square feet of open office space in this town.
Lower the rents.
500,000 square
left.
feet. 500,000 square feet. No one wants to be in offices anymore. The office space is going away. There needs to be a redevelopment opportunity here, and it specifically calls for multifamily within your bylaw.
Yep.
I'm sorry,
It does.
but I will not approve something that, where this is this was done to be a medical office location when they first came here, and they even looked at Meeting House Road, that was supposed to be medical offices, not
Every
corporate
project
offices,
within
medical offices.
CEIOD was built for something else. This is redevelopment.
Right, and I don't think this meets our criteria of what we want in this town, in that area. That's not the right spot.
Mike?
I have no issues.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work there. I think it's perfect for CEIOD, and we do need more housing. I'd like to see if there's any way we could think about making that area be one of our sites for MBTA redevelopment.
Might push Radisson.
We're not lacking for space to designate that place.
Well, we really are at the very beginning, so I guess we don't really know what we have for space. I mean, we gave them some ideas, but that doesn't mean we can't have new ideas too, that add to the list of parcels that we want to investigate.
I think we brought that up with the Radisson.
What's that?
We
The
brought up the
Radisson, yeah.
Radisson in our discussions.
I do have a question about, and I don't know if the sewer restrictions would prohibit this, but, I mean, one of the things I like about it is the proximity to town, the proximity to the bus, the proximity to services. Is there any possibility or thought of redeveloping any of the first floor into maybe restaurants or other commercial businesses other than medical offices?
There's not been yet that I'm aware of.
Nothing yet, no.
Okay. So I'll take a motion.
I would move, because I think this does fall squarely within the COID, is I would move that we grant a determination that the COID is applicable to this property.
I'll second that.
Okay, should we vote?
Aye.
No.
No.
Aye.
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 5-3.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, on to off Turnpike Road, ratify and review the decision. So as I stated earlier, I had discussed with Paul that indeed us communicating and collating our thoughts does not put us in any risk of violating open meeting laws. So, however, I had not sent along my edits to Evan. I meant to do it earlier in the week, and because I was in a electronic black hole, I did not. I sent them this afternoon. Did you ever see them?
I could open the document, but it did not identify any revisions.
Oh,
It was in
Okay.
like a Google Share.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I had just a couple thoughts. First of all, my name and Paul's name were spelled wrong.
I think I've corrected that.
Okay.
Uh,
On the version I had, it wasn't.
Okay, so you weren't looking at those are the
Most
only
up to
corrections
date.
I made
Okay.
since 2 weeks ago. The
All right,
version you
under
have printed
Under
should have those.
facts,
Yep,
I think it should say 20 feet for 20-feet trailers. It's-
yes, yep.
And then below that, I think it should say, nor is it within the aquifer protection district on number 8.
Yep, nor is it, yep.
Yeah.
You
and
mentioned
then-
those last meeting, yep.
And then under findings, I had a couple additions that I would like to suggest we make. One is under number 1. I would like to elaborate a bit on that it's not an appropriate location, just by specifying that adding on to that sentence, it's not an appropriate location, comma, where it sits bounded by residential properties, with the elevation of the surrounding residential properties. And then under B, the vehicular safety is provided on site, blah, 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 blah. I would like to amend, I looked at the minutes for the meeting of our discussion, and I rewatched the meeting, and I felt like there's a few things that came up in our conversation of the discussion of the decision that weren't reflected in the, in the findings. So one is that, so I'd like to add on that I'll read it, and then I can give it to you, or other people can see if they just in tenor agree. Nevertheless, the road being a scenic and winding road used by many for biking and recreational uses, and the property being across the street from a group home serving as a residence for developmentally disabled adults, there were several board members who continued to voice concerns regarding the impact of large trucks and cranes on the neighborhood with regard to noise, traffic, and safety of the nearby residents. I mean, I think all those were brought up in the in our discussion by, Chris brought up the safety and the noise and I don't know. I don't remember who brought up exactly what, but I didn't think that was reflected enough in that decision. I think that what we have is adequate for declining the proposal, but I think there was more to the decision than is reflected in these findings, and I'd like more that to be reflected.
And Deirdre, along that same lines, those items that you suggested including there should also be included in the last statement on page 1, primary concerns. So those lists
The
can
last statement
match.
where?
Yeah, they should match.
Okay.
Last statement on page 1, the primary concerns include noise, lights, number of trucks, size of trucks, hours of operation, should also include all the things that you just listed.
Okay.
Just to clarify, the reason that I didn't include those as board's concerns is that during the discussion of the decision, there wasn't a single board member.
No, I
who
don't think
mentioned-
that's correct.
It's true, because I rewatched,
So did I.
not as part of the board deliberation, it was not mentioned. Otherwise, it would have been in the decision.
Okay.
But I think they're valid concerns, and I'm fine with adding those.
I mean, Chris definitely talked about his concerns with traffic.
Yes,
And the location specifically.
yes.
Mike discussed about the
Yes, and
elevation.
those are all
It's
in
in
there.
there.
But what I'm saying is that needs to be part of the last statement on page 1, where it says primary concerns
From the
include.
public. As long as the board agrees to expand the board's reasoning to include scenic roads and group home,
Sit down each one,
I'll add it.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is,
puts in why.
when you review the discussion of the decision, there wasn't a single board member that mentioned the scenic road or the group home.
May I pose a brief question here? Are either of those roads actually designated as scenic roads?
Mill Road is.
Mill Road is designated, okay, that's the important factor, because I would hesitate to use the term scenic road
Take your
unless it
life in your
applied
own
to one
hands
of
on
them.
that road, but that's,
Right.
ride your bike on that road.
No,
Yeah,
I
right.
wouldn't.
Shorten your lifespan.
And then, all right, so I was gonna put the altitude in a different place, but if you tell me it's already there and I missed it, that's fine, I'll leave it off. And then I guess the last thing is that number 2, the subject property is a proper parcel to be developed, blah, 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 meets all requisite requirements, the board determines that the proposed project will not generate adverse impacts to abutting properties, specifically as it pertains to traffic flow, parking, loading, adequacy of utilities, environmental and fiscal impacts. I guess that's true, other than the traffic, but I thought people did express discomfort with the traffic.
So with the exception of traffic?
Yeah.
Do you have anything else? Okay. I had some questions, Evan, that I sent you in an email on the findings section, specifically to E and F. The way I read that, it sounded like the part in italics was how the plan aligns with the requirement.
Mhm.
But then the next statement under that first part of italics talks about how it doesn't align with that, or the board finds that it didn't.
You mean several members voted against the permit criteria based on the intrusion of vehicle
Yeah.
headlights?
Yeah.
I didn't
This-
really
But
understand
the
what to
part
make of
before
those
that
italics.
indicates that the headlights were mitigated.
Yeah. I'll try to explain how I interpreted the board's discussion based upon the public hearing. When lights are on within the parking lot, they're screened. They're screened by the fence that's on top of a retaining wall, and they're screened by the preservation of the mature trees around the perimeter. The specific concern that a board member addressed was when the vehicles were exiting and they come to a stop at the bottom of the hill.
So maybe we should
So
clarify into
my
abutting
interpretation was the
properties.
majority of the board members didn't necessarily see a headlight issue, and a couple did. So I was just trying to articulate and sparse it. Normally, I wouldn't sparse it, because it wasn't a majority of the board that articulated a headlight concern. And at the end of the day, that particular headlight concern, where a vehicle is exiting a site, that could be applicable to anywhere in town where it abuts residential. And I'm not sure that that's a good justifiable reason for denial, because it's a general characteristic where you have split zoning.
True.
I mean, the bylaw requires them to minimize, mitigate light pollution from the site, off the site. But generally, that's been interpreted as you're shielding it while they're operating on site, not necessarily exiting the site.
Right. That makes sense.
All right.
And then the same thing for F.
I mean,
Yes,
That's-
same
I think
same
everybody
example,
who
yeah.
voted against it, that was the case.
Same situation. So again, normally I wouldn't acknowledge several members. In this particular case, since there were several new members and those were the ones expressing specific concerns, I added it into the decision. It's not something we would normally do.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if you read the first part of F, that the departure from the character as viewed from public ways and places has been minimized based on the small industrial style building. That's completely contradictory to the next statement.
Right, so then you say maybe several members nonetheless voted against the special
For
permit, or
purposes
several
of
members
drafting the
disagreed.
decision, I didn't want to find myself in a discussion like this where someone's saying, well, I said this, how come it's not in there? So the several members is my way of indicating that I'm listening, I'm reviewing, and
I think it's
I'm
perfectly fair.
as a board, I mean, I don't think the decision where it talks about several members, if that's not aligned with the full board or the majority of the board, I would remove it.
No, I think,
I think that's the main reason.
correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I heard, that, and maybe it's just our interpretation of, or how I'm reading the first point. It just seems like when you read the first paragraph, like it says that it's been minimized, it seems like then the several boards, like I think we need to add that word that you said, nevertheless, voted against it. So it,
Either the board members felt it hasn't been minimized enough, or it wasn't
like,
minimized
we're
at all,
missing a
but
word, because
I
it
understand what you're
seems.
saying, I understand what you're saying
It
now.
seems like it's being
So-
contradicted, yeah.
My interpretation of the board's denial was the primary factor was neighborhood character. And so if the board views F as, I believe one of the criteria speaks to neighborhood character specifically, but if you also believe that F is closely tied to neighborhood character, then I would suggest that we simply remove the small 3,500 square foot industrial sized building with limited views and indicate that was not being compatible with the character of the neighborhood and vicinity.
Okay,
I would include has been minimized in the removal, because it was not minimized in
Yeah, like that's
most of
what's
our
throwing
views.
us off is
Okay.
that word.
right.
And that was my concern with the one prior to. It's not necessarily that it was several.
Yeah, no, I hear what
members.
you're
It was
saying.
the
I think
language difference.
F speaks more towards the majority, the reason for the majority voting against. The headlight one, I don't think, at least the record doesn't clearly indicate that the majority of the board was concerned about headlights. But I agree with you on F. That was one of the primary majority reasons for denial.
Well, then, could you clarify that statement that several board members voted against special permit criteria based on something about the intrusion of headlights not being minimized enough, or something?
My suggestion is you strike that.
Yeah.
If it's, again, for purposes of drafting, so that there's some transparency as part of this exercise, that's why it's included. But as the board ratifies it, where I note several members, my suggestion is you delete those references. If they're not in unison with the findings of the full board. Again, like Mike Walsh says, some findings in approval criteria can be positive and some may be negative.
Right.
There's-
I mean, it throws me off. We haven't written, first of all, we haven't written a lot of negative decisions.
Right.
So I don't have a lot of experience with this. I observed you doing it, the board doing it in the
Chris Mill too?
grist mill too, and I mean, it was written as a yes decision until it was a no, so then it went back and got rewritten. But when I read the decision, I was like, this is written to be a yes. I don't understand. It was a
That
no.
one, so just,
The process is a little confusing.
the board took a different process on that one. And Mike Walsh was chair, if you recall, and it's important because Chris has mentioned this as part of discussions. With Grist Mill 2,
There was
the chair
23.
required the board keep the hearing open and directed staff to draft a decision.
Right.
So because the board hadn't entered into discussion of the decision, I drafted a neutral decision leaning towards positive based upon the record to date. Then it was revised to be a negative decision based upon specific facts and findings that the board discussed.
Right.
In this particular case, the board didn't ask staff to keep the hearing open and do a draft. The board closed the hearing, did their discussion of the decision, and voted. And that's what this exercise is about.
So should we be voting on individual findings to include in here?
You don't need to.
You vote on the property,
But
and
if-
then the meat on the vote is the reasons.
So I think
So I think you could do it either way. You could rate every little thing that everyone had a problem with, or you could say the majority of the board had a
So-
problem.
But in my discussion of this decision, I didn't list out all of the reasons,
Right, I didn't either.
because other people had already covered it.
Right.
I assumed that because other people had covered it, it would be in the findings. But it sounds like because I didn't voice my support for some of those specific findings, it might be worded differently in the finding now. So,
That might be an issue.
It could be. That's a fair.
so I think going forward,
Yeah.
we should be listing all of our specific,
Which may speak to the list of concerns.
Right.
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 Assisting the board and assisting myself. I don't think we're that far off.
yeah.
I don't want you to think that I'm interpreting, just because you didn't echo another board member's concern, as long as they're captured in here. I may have thought too much about the several member thing. Maybe that's creating confusion for this evening's discussion. But I thought it was important to try to articulate and capture that there were, several members who may have thought differently than the majority of the board. But after tonight's conversation, it may be that you didn't feel differently. You just may not have, other members may not have articulated the same concern that you
Individual list,
articulated,
yeah.
right?
So can I just add one little edit, just for my processing of this? I'm looking at E, and we said that, we decided that, it had been minimized. And then we go to the next page, it says, several members voted against. Can we say however, can we just put the word however, sevevel members voted against
Yeah,
it?
I'm fine
Just-
with that, yeah.
Yeah.
That
That's
was kind
just-
of the intent here.
Yeah, I'm fine with having, the way it is,
Yeah.
as is, but, it just gets me
Yeah, it's
confused.
a fair point.
Right, sorry.
No, it's a weird thing to vote no and then justify the no vote, and then, like, it's a lot of double negatives, kind
Yeah.
of.
And then,
Understood.
Evan, the number 2, just before the decision, is a duplicated number 2. I think that should be number 3 based on the prior page.
Oh, yeah, it's numbered wrong.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
All right, so, should we move to approve, or somebody?
Yeah, I would move, I'm sorry, do you have?
Hold on, I
another
just
comment?
wanted, I thought I saw, so Evan, based on my email, did you take out the approval is conditioned as follows? Because I'm not,
I did,
I
yeah,
saw
I
it
took
before.
that whole thing out.
okay,
Yep.
all right.
Took that
I
all
saw it
out.
before and I couldn't
Yep.
see it now, so
Yeah,
I didn't
thank
know if
you.
I was just missing it. All right, thanks.
Motion?
Well, then I would move that we approve this draft, subject to the conversation that we've just had.
So we're moving to approve
The-
the draft findings?
Yeah, well,
Well,
to
the draft
approve the
as just
entire
revised in this
document,
meeting.
really.
Okay.
In other words, we pass it back to Evan, he makes the final edits, and it goes to her with for sign off without any further activity on our part.
Okay, so we're making a motion to approve the draft with the corrections
Yeah, with the
mentioned
corrections as mentioned.
in this meeting.
Yep. That's what I'm trying to say, anyway.
I just want to make sure that it's clear.
So there was a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Ship it.
Okay. Poor Mike, I told him we'd be fast. 11 School Street, ratify the decision. And review.
This one was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It wasn't, as you know, there wasn't a lot of detailed discussion, testimony, deliberation.
Okay. Take a motion?
I will move that we, let's see, is this to, make sure I know.
This is to,
This is to ratify the decisions.
that's
document.
correct.
Okay. I move that we ratify this, this draft, and,
I'll second that.
All in favor?
aye.
Okay. No new public hearings or old ones. New business liaison updates. Anyone have a liaison update? I have one. From Housing Advisory Board. They're kind of starting to move towards making new housing plan recommendations, and I propose that we would like their input in our MBTA cities work, and I think also we should probably engage the select board as well, and maybe conservation. And also they're talking about accessory units. There's a movement statewide to implement the use of accessory dwelling units. And the Housing Advisory Board is feeling very concerned by the approximately 10-year waiting list for seniors to get an affordable housing after being on the list. So they're trying to look at any way which can move that dial more in favor. And one of the things they're thinking about is putting forth some changes to our current in-law apartment regulations. Evan, would you agree that's a adequate
I think it
description?
won't matter. I think this is being fast-tracked, that,
The state level?
yes.
I think you're
That's
right.
what I heard.
Mhm.
So
I
it
think you're
really
right.
doesn't matter what we do.
Yeah, I mean, if the state changes the zoning act to require towns to allow ADUs by right, then we'll have to comply.
We'll have to deal with it then. And we're probably better off waiting till we see the language.
I heard it was happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's-
there's been previous efforts. So what the Housing Advisory Board started with was talking about looking at revising the limited accessory apartment current bylaw, and that's evolved into this ADU So they may be one and the same, or they may evolve into, separate, separate paths.
It's interesting, anyway.
I'm assuming the housing
You're gonna
group
be able
would,
to put a tiny house in your property
right,
by right.
but I'm assuming that housing group would have to come here and we would. adjust the
Bylaw, you
zoning.
mean?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, the bylaw would come to us.
okay.
But it wouldn't be every zone.
Well, it depends what
Yeah.
the state
I
does.
think the state's
That's
leaning
what
that
they're
way.
doing, and then
They're
when
not
the
gonna
in-law,
discriminate, they're
then
gonna say
when
across
the-
the
Yeah,
board.
and then they
Put it in
may,
for
they
elderly
may
person.
suggest that towns can figure out how to adopt it locally, or they may be very, descriptive and prescriptive as to what the
Thou shalt.
requirements are.
It's gonna be mandated.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
gonna be,
my
it's not gonna be a
understanding,
suggestion, it's
right,
gonna be.
my understanding though, once it's in there, and say I add a tiny house in my lot for my parents.
Yeah.
Once my parents
That's what it's
pass
for.
on, then I can continue to rent
You
it.
can rent it.
Yeah, that's what they're discussing, yes.
So they're not discussing limited use of
No.
it? It's open use?
It will be limited. It
Would
can't be
built
open across
as-
everywhere.
It would be built
zone.
as limited use, but once it
Yeah.
is no longer useful in that original use, then it could be open use as,
Ah.
And it could,
And,
it's,
and the reason for that too is, home office use.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people are gonna use this for.
But again, that's a limited use. It's
And then-
not renting it out to,
Like, there's so many different limited uses,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Well, we'll
the-
see how the law kind of.
Yeah, this
I
is,
would
this is
leave
gonna
it
be
to
so
the
complex,
yeah.
I don't think we should try to second guess it.
No,
till we have
no,
text in
I
front of
agree.
us.
anyone else have any other liaison reports?
Yes, Madam Chair, I attended the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting on June 1st and the prior one in early May. And actually, this is right along this discussion. So the most interesting part of the meeting, in my opinion, for this board is near the end, a member brought up a comparison that they did on limited accessory apartments. And there was a lot of discussion amongst the ZBA members about what constitutes an LAA, versus an addition. I guess it's been a subject that's come up. And they also looked at, the LAA laws, or the bylaws in Billerica, Westford, compared to Chelmsford. And so, it's something that we'll probably be hearing more about. And along the discussion that the board just had about, this is just my personal perspective. I don't think any of us here are against creating senior housing or limited accessory apartments. From my personal nature, I do have a concern that, we always hear about how the need for senior housing, but I think we have to be realistic too with density is what happens when that senior citizen passes away. You're basically allowing someone to convert a residential home or a single family into basically a two-family.
Yeah.
So I think it's just,
effectively what
I
you're
think it's
doing.
just something that needs to be looked at. In the
Yeah, that's
future,
gonna be, it's a very careful dance on the bylaw.
Which is why the LAA bylaw is written the way it is for Chelmsford.
Yeah.
So the state's put everything on the table related to housing production, and they're aware that some towns, such as Chelmsford, allow it, but only allow for limited purposes.
Yeah.
And the state's, as Paul and Anita have mentioned, is looking at ways to remove restrictions.
Okay,
All right.
anyone else?
No, it's at some point, I did not attend the last master plan meeting. I was unavailable for it, and I haven't collected enough information about it to be able to report on it, but I will try to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I had family from Italy here, so I did not attend that. Oh my God,
NEMCOG?
thank you.
Can you reach out to Jay Finnegan about
All right, minutes to approve,
I do have a comment on all of the minutes, or at least 3 of them.
that you're the chair?
Yeah, I mean, I am flattered to be considered such a factotum, but I was not the chair on the last 3
I'm gonna bring
minutes.
it up
I saw that
Go
too.
through
Yeah.
this again, I'll bring it up at that point, but not now.
Can I, regarding the minutes, I was at the select board meeting last week, or not last week, Monday. Seems like last week. One of the things they mentioned were the minutes that, they were kind of looking at what committees' minutes relate and,
Yeah, I was listening.
yeah, so, and I wasn't clear what they were trying to say, but I was wondering, someone's about, because I think Becky does them for us, correct? I wasn't sure if she was really, if this is too much, and should we maybe go to the
Wait,
select board?
Paul is looking for someone to do our minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh,
He
that
sent me
was-
an email yesterday, I think,
Yeah.
that he everyone, apparently all the other boards have someone, a designated minute taker, and that our minutes, because our meetings are so long and so detailed and specific, that it really takes a long, it
Yeah.
takes 2 or 3 hours to do an hour worth
Easily.
of minutes. And so we're behind. So he had brought to my attention that we were behind since the election, that we hadn't had a minutes posted since late March. And I was like, yeah, well, we have 3, but we didn't get to reviewing them because they came out
Right.
right before the meeting. So we're gonna be caught up to the guideline. And then it was brought to my attention that A, that wasn't true because April 9th we still don't have, or April 12th or whatever it is. And B, there's other minutes dating back to 22 and 23 earlier that we don't have. It's total of 9 minus these 4, so it'll be 5.
Okay, it was just
And
my
he's gonna-
recommendation
yeah.
was, because I know
He's
like all
gonna-
the other
He
committees
wants to
have them.
try and
Yeah.
hire someone.
Okay, that was just what I was, great.
And meanwhile, Becky is muddling through and catching us up. That was pretty good catch up here.
Which we
Yeah,
really
well,
appreciate.
I mean, as
like,
you,
it's
as you
not-
notice,
not a criticism
your
of her at
agendas
all.
are quickly getting quiet.
Right.
So
That will
within,
help.
when a
Catch-up
week,
time.
when Becky finds a week, she's able to, pump out minutes. So it's cyclical.
Yeah.
I'll take a motion for the minutes.
You want them one at a time or all in a
We
bunch?
do one at a time, because the first one,
Yeah.
I wasn't even
Yeah,
here.
you
Yeah, I
have to
can't
abstain on
even-
Right,
that.
like,
I have
we
to-
have, we
I don't
have to
remember.
do, yeah, we have to
I
kind of
wasn't,
do them.
that was one meeting I wasn't
I mean, I
at.
looked at it, I was at it, but I don't really recall.
The first one is Raisbeck,
Yeah,
Connolly, and Walsh. You're the only 3 who can vote on the first set.
All right, move to
I'm
approve.
good with it. I scanned it,
Me too.
and, I can't say that I remember it all that well, but I remember some of it, so I would move that we accept the minutes of 3/9/22.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We want to do the other 3
Yes.
as a bunch?
Yes,
Can we?
yes.
Can we do all the
Can
other
we do them
three?
all?
Just-
One fell
Yeah,
swoop?
as long as people voting are eligible to vote.
So it's Paul, Mike, Deirdre, and me?
Sounds good.
And
No,
and I
you
was
two.
here since.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so-
Yeah,
so
you two,
everybody.
you don't have
April.
7.
Yep.
Okay, this is all this year, right? Sorry, never mind.
So,
Actually, Chris too, because that makes,
yeah,
he makes
Chris
7.
votes on this.
He's voting member.
I was in these meetings.
Yeah,
Okay.
Now you can vote on it.
Doing the hard work.
yeah. I would move that we accept.
You wish.
Can
You
I,
vote
can
on
I
it.
just bring something up?
Yeah.
That if we had a full board, I wouldn't be able to vote on these?
That's
Even
it.
though
If
I was
you're
in
an
the meeting?
But
associate,
you
but
are,
you're
we have a full board,
board.
and you're it.
You're it.
You're part of the full board.
But my point is that
Timing
the
works out for you.
associate member would not be able to vote on these
Right,
minutes.
correct.
if
Right,
there was a
that's
full board.
absolutely
That's
correct.
correct. That's what we just
Yep.
voted. We agree.
Even though they were,
Part
We
of it.
agree.
Yep.
okay. Odd, but okay.
Okay,
And do we
may
have
I?
a second?
So can we just be clear, we're approving the minutes of April 26, 2023, May 10th, 2023,
Yes.
and May 24th, 2023.
Sounds to me like you just made a motion.
All right, so I'm making a motion that we
Second.
approve those 3 dates.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll
No
make a
opposed?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you all.